Welcome to this video demonstrating Dynamics Additions Handheld for warehousing. Today I have the developer of this edition with me, who's going to explain the aim of the day.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So yes, my name's Heidi. I'm the developer of Dynamics Additions Handheld for warehousing, and I'm going to do a bit of a show and tell and explain some of the concepts behind the design decisions that we made with the product. I have with me here an Intermec CK71 and a few other devices. The CK3R, which we tend to recommend for people, it's good for most applications, and also a Intermec CN51.
Are these all current devices that we can supply?
They are, yes. So the CK71 is kind of like the gold standard in that they're high quality devices, but they're more expensive. For most people, the CK3R is more than adequate, and the CN51 tends to be used more for proof of delivery and things like that, but it can be used for warehousing as well. The key point with these devices is that they're rugged. They're going to take the knocks. They're going to have a hard life.
So they're designed for use in a warehouse production environment?
They are indeed, yes. So these devices tend to have a hard life. They get roughly treated in the warehouse. So you need something that's going to last and that's easily repairable.
So which device is this?
So that's the CK71. That's what we'll be doing the demonstration on today. It's kind of the gold standard. It's good for extremes of temperature and drops, that kind of thing. It is the more expensive device. I'd say the sort of base device that we tend to suggest to people now is the Intermec CK3R, but that's certainly the gold standard, and it's also the one I used to develop on.
And which device is this?
This is the CK3R. This is the device that we tend to recommend to people. It's nice and rugged, almost as good as the CK71, and significantly cheaper. It's more than good enough for most people's needs. And
the rubber casing?
The rubber boot is just an extra piece of protection. It's removable. It's entirely optional. All of the devices you can have trigger options on them. You can have like little gun handles on them if you want them as well. So you don't just hold them in the hand. You've actually got them in holsters, that kind of thing as well.
Cool. And which device is this?
That's a CN51. It's not as rugged as the other devices, but it has a slightly longer screen on it. In fact, it has a nice, bright, clear screen on it, but it's certainly a good option. It's not the primary choice for warehouse devices. It's used for proof of deliveries a fair bit as well. But it's certainly an option, as is anything running Windows Embedded or Windows Mobile 6.5. Okay, so the software that we're using to see what's going on the device screen, because what we're seeing here on the left-hand side really is the device itself. We're using something called Mobi Control, and that's what we generally use with our customers to be able to support the devices and roll software updates through on them as well. But it's also very useful for demonstrations. So that we can show people easily what's going on the screen on the device. But this is an actual handheld device with a barcode scanner that is ruggedized.
So we're going to see a remote view of what's happening on the actual screen, on the actual device?
We are, yes. But I think it's also important to show that these are actual real devices, and we will be scanning barcodes today.
Excellent.
As opposed to typing things in, because that's generally how they're going to be used in the warehouse. So the devices run Windows Embedded Compact or Windows Mobile 6.5. They're the primary choice for these kinds of devices. This is what the hardware manufacturers have tended to stick with. They need to be able to take the knocks. They need to be easily repaired. And also as well, Windows Embedded Compact offers the right kind of user interface, most suitable for processes in a warehouse environment. There are a lot of handheld and truck mounted devices out there, and in the main they're running Windows Embedded Compact. So it does work on truck mounted devices as well, The software is designed to scale to the screen that it's running on, and it works very nicely on truck-mounted devices that have larger scale screens on them, with just some adjustments to the button sizes on the menus usually required, but other than that it works perfectly.
So anything that runs Windows CE or Mobile 6 point something?
That's right, yes. Yes,
Okay.
That's right.
And which version of NAV will it work for?
We've just ended support for Dynamics NAV 2015, and it runs fine on Dynamics NAV 2016 and 2017.
I see. So it's geared for latest versions.
It is indeed, and we've also threaded the new technologies that they've added into the latest versions of NAV, such as events, which are actually allowing NAV developers to extend out the product for individual customers without affecting the product at all. So that's a real benefit in terms of being able to customise the solution for a particular customer's needs. It really was, for me, one of the final pieces of the puzzle for making something that was easily upgradable. So we have a product that is not touched, but the customer can have additional prompts if they want, entirely new functions. It's not a problem at all.
And this product does have a good amount of history behind it as well. It has a good track record, I believe.
It does. This is version 6. And I've been looking after it personally for the last 5 years. I wasn't the first, but what we've done here is really we've started from the ground up with it with version 6, in that whereas before we had to change the device side and NAV, which made it difficult to introduce simple things like new fields or slight changes in behaviour. The way it's written now is that all of that is in Dynamics NAV, and it's the job of any NAV developer to actually change the behaviour of the device without requiring somebody to work on both sides and marry both sides up. So it's a lot better in that way.
I see.
Okay, but yes, it has been around quite a while now, in previous iterations.
So we have a number of customers on various different versions of NAV that have had this product in the past.
Absolutely, yes. We've got a lot of customers. Well, as part of the Microsoft certification process that we've just gone through, it's necessary to have a certain number of reference sites, and
Right.
we had no problem in that regard at all.
So we now do have CFMD status.
We do,
Excellent.
with all the benefits that brings. So I'm very pleased about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Okay, so shall we get started on the screen? So the first thing that you see when you log in is the login screen. And you can choose a device user from the drop-down list here, which you can see here. But that's not necessary because it does remember the last person that logged in. So if it tends to be one user assigned to a device all the time, then there's no need for them to start clicking on drop-down boxes or anything like that. It will default automatically to the password field, and you just type your password in, which I'm going to do on the device now. There we go. And that takes us straight to the main menu. And you can see the images loading in behind that as well. We load the menu in first and then the images on top of that.
These tiles look familiar straight away.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's been designed to look like a Dynamics NAV role centre, whilst at the same time retaining large buttons. In a warehouse environment, you've got people that might be wearing gloved hands or whatever, but you don't want them to be constantly taking a stylus out or whatever. You need big buttons, you need large user interface controls, and you need to keep it simple because you don't want it to get in their way. These menus are completely configurable per user or organisation. You can see that we've got queue values in exactly the same way as you'd see in Dynamics NAV's role centre, and these are currently set to pick up, in the case of receiving, how many outstanding warehouse receipts are there, or in the case of picking, how many outstanding picks are there overall. But they are completely configurable.
Are those figures for the location that I'm in?
They are, yes. And you can also make them configurable for the current user. So here, if we look at the internal screen, Here you can see the physical inventory. That one is actually set up to link to the current user as well. So that is not just how many physical inventory lines there are in the current location, it's how many have been assigned to this user to go and count. So you can filter it out that way as well.
So it's a sort of a management tool as well, if I'm looking at how I'm managing people and activities in my warehouse.
It is, and I'd actually like to see that extend out as time goes on as well. I really do like the fact that you can sort of see at a glance possibly where the bottlenecks are turning up in your warehouse. And we've also got, here at the top, we've actually got the same colour indicators that we have in the role centre that can be configured to say whether, that's good, bad, indeterminate.
So those sentiment bands can turn orange or red to indicate the urgency of the task.
That's it. You've got the same set of colours that you have in the Dynamics NAV role centre. So, it looks familiar, but at the same time, it's imparting useful information, and it's useful for gloved hands or larger hands or whatever, without having to get a stylus out and fiddle.
So what piece of work are we going to do first?
Okay, so if I just talk a bit actually about the design principles behind it. We wanted clear-cut user interface design. We want to focus on making it clear what happens next. We want to keep the user interface simple and optimise that experience for gloved hands. And we really do not want people reaching for a stylus. These devices come with a stylus, but that's not really what you want in a warehousing environment.
It's a bit fiddly to get the stylus in and out all the time to make use of it, or...
That's it, yeah. You don't want all that toing and froing, and you can guarantee that stylus will be lost pretty quickly. As I've already said, these things have an incredibly difficult life. But also, we improve the efficiency of the warehouse processes is important as well. It's imperative that the devices don't get in the way of the people in the warehouse doing their job. Again, you need that predictable user interface. You need to rely on barcode scanning and minimal user input. You really don't want them repeatedly looking at the screen or the device getting in their way, because it's there to help them work quicker and more efficiently, not to slow them down.
Okay. So once I know that it expects a scan for location and a scan for the item, I can just do scan, and that's it, and move on.
That's it, yes. A pick at its very heart is scan the item number, scan the barcode on the box that's got the item number in it, enter the quantity you're picking, and that's it. So it should be scan, yeah? That's what it should be about. You shouldn't be having to repeatedly look at the screen. So, and also what we want to record as well is we want traceability. Getting KPI information out of these devices is important. We have customers who want to know how fast their people are working. So every single piece of information that's passed between the device and NAV is logged and recorded. And later on, I'll show an example Power BI that will show sort of things like how fast are people scanning and what kind of activities are they doing.
Okay, so we could look at metrics of throughput per hour.
That's it, yeah. Yeah. We can see how fast people are working, and maybe if they're not working too fast or whatever.
And what about paper? Are we trying to replace paper with this?
As much as possible. You've got the devices with you. If you're in a pick, you want the device to be suggesting to you where you should be going next and what you should be picking and what you should be doing. You don't want to have a paper-based pick list in your hand as well as the device. You have to have the device saying to you, this is where you need to go next and this is what you need to do, particularly with picks and replenishment activities.
Because I guess it's real-time information that the device can deliver to me.
Well, that's right, yes.
So
these things are always online in the warehouse. So, if you've grabbed a pick, nobody else will grab that pick. And what it is suggesting to you is unique to you and up to the minute.
Whereas paper's out of date since you printed, so this way it's always correct
information.
That's right.
Yes. Okay. And also as well, if you were using a paper-based system, then it's like, well, someone's printed you off a pick sheet, and then you're scribbling on the pick sheet, and then it has to be handed to somebody else in the back office who's then going to type that information in anyway. So this sort of cuts that out, and it lets you get a lot more out the door more quickly.
How about an example?
Okay, so if we just go through a basic receipt. So on the device, we go into the receipting screen. So we've got receipts and putaways there, and I'm going to go straight into that. Okay. So all transactions on the device follow this same kind of flow. By and large, you need a certain number of pieces of information in order to complete a particular transaction on the device. So the device goes to NAV, and says I'm doing a receipt function, and then NAV says, oh, you need these pieces of information in order to be able to complete. So in this particular case, the premise is that a lorry has turned up containing some goods that you've ordered. The delivery documentation is either going to be in the driver's hands or it's going to be affixed to the product that's just arrived. And we need to unload the delivery and we need to put it somewhere in the warehouse. One warehouse user is going to get the goods off the lorry and drop it in the loading bay, and a second user is going to be putting that away, and they're both working at the same time. So going back to what I said earlier, we're keeping it simple. It's imperative not to get in the way of the people doing the work. We don't want to make their life harder. We want to streamline those processes, and we want to help them put these goods away somewhere appropriate. So the device needs a document number, an identifier of some kind that's going to link it to the incoming order, in this case a purchase order. And I've got some pre-prepared barcodes, which I have here. Okay, so quite often you'd be very lucky to have a barcode of the purchase order number on there, but I do have a barcode.
Which kind of barcodes are these?
Well, you've got at the top, you've got 3 of 9 code for the purchase order number, and then the second 2 barcodes are what called GS1128 barcodes, and they're different in that they're a standard, but they can contain multiple pieces of information. So these 2 barcodes here, we've got the product code identifiers and the quantity identifiers. So that means there are 2 pieces of information in there that we can pick up in one scan. And at the bottom there, we've got a 3 of 9 barcode, which only contains 1 piece of information, and in this case, it's the product code. What we're going to do first, we're going to scan the purchase order number, like so. It comes straight back. So it's found a purchase order number there. And then...
So the other operative now pulls the boxes off the lorry.
Yeah. So as you see, we're going to keep it as simple as possible. The device needs a document number, an identifier of some kind that's going to link it to the incoming order, in this case a purchase order. Behind the scenes, the device has told Dynamics NAV that it's doing a function called receipt. And in return, Dynamics NAV has told the device what is required to finish that receipt function. So all of the transactional functions work like this. They're all exactly the same. And it's Dynamics NAV that's controlling what's prompted for, its validation, what happens when you post it, and it's all using standard Dynamics NAV functionality as much as possible. And that means that a Dynamics NAV developer only has to change the code in Dynamics NAV to change the behavior of what's happening on the device. So Dynamics NAV has said in this case that first you need a document number. You're also going to need an item number or an item cross-reference, maybe a variant, a lot number, a serial number, an expiration date. You're definitely going to need a quantity. To the device, these are just a series of things that it needs to ask for. And when it's collected all of those, it's going to tell that to Dynamics NAV, and then Dynamics NAV is going to do the hard work. So we've scanned our purchase order number. What we're doing now is we've got to scan the items. So our first warehouse employee is in the lorry and he's looking at a box of stuff that he needs to get off the lorry that's for him. So he's going to scan its barcode, and I'm going to scan the first barcode, which is a GS1128 barcode. You see that was quite quick. And that GS1128 barcode contains the item number and the quantity. So we've done that in one scan. So we've seen a box, we've scanned it, and we've got the quantity as well. So in actual fact, that's ready to post. This is not item tracked. It has no variance or anything like that. And Nav has said, right, we don't need anything else. That's all we need. So he's scanned that barcode, he's taken it out the back of the lorry, and he's put it in the loading bay. And then he takes it. We've got another couple of those, so we're going to take that and post that. So that's off the lorry. Then we've got another one, and that's off the lorry. And then we've got a different item altogether, and that's also a GS1128, and that's off the lorry. So you can see we can do that really quickly.
That was fast, yes.
Yes. And that's the point, in that we don't want to slow people down. We don't want them looking at the screen. It's scan, 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 and I'm physically taking the stuff off the lorry and I'm done. Now our final barcode, which as we said before is a 3 of 9 barcode, it only contains the product code. So we're just going to scan that. And we can see that that's a manual for loudspeakers. And we've got 150 outstanding, but because the quantity wasn't part of the barcode, it's asking us for the quantity to receive. So I'm just going to enter the quantity and hit return. And that's done. And then I've got another one. There we go. And I'm going to say 2. Now actually I got that wrong. It should have been 4. So what you can do is actually press on the piece of information you want to cancel, and it asks me, do you want to adjust or cancel the quantity to receive? I say yes, and I can rekey it.
So just a simple press on the screen.
That's it. So previous versions of the product, if you made a mistake at that point, you'd have to go out and go back in again. So we wanted a way of being able to adjust for mistakes, which, you know, when you're hand keying things, that tends to happen, without having to go out all the way back in again. But we didn't want it in your face. We didn't want it to be, you know, a fiddly thing again where you get to get the stylus out or anything like that. We just wanted you to be able to press on a data item there and say, no, I need to cancel that off and re-enter it again, and it doesn't get in the way. So that's that receipt complete, and that's all been done with code from NAV's side. So you can see now that we've got 6 put away activities. Now, the person standing in the loading bay whose job it is to start putting this delivery away, they're sitting in the receipting area and they're waiting, and they want to find somewhere to put these things. Now, put away activities, they've generally got a different focus to pick or movement activities, whereas the device is going to be saying to you, look, you need to go to bin XYZ and you need to go and pick this item, whatever it's called, and you need to go and put it somewhere else. In the case of a put away, that doesn't really work, because what you've got is you've got a series of boxes or pallets around you, and what you really need to do is to scan those barcodes and then for the system to tell you what it thinks you need to do with it. So we're going to scan the barcodes of some of the items that we've just received. I'll start with the top one. There we go. And it's found a put away for us. So it's saying, okay, you've got 2 front wheels, and it's expecting you to place it in W040011. Now that's standard Dynamics NAV that's created that put away, and it's down to how you configure NAV as to where it decides it's going to put it. The device has just simply found an outstanding put away for you to do. So they know they need to go over to W040011 and place this pallet in there.
So we didn't need to know the put away number, that's all just driven from the item number?
Absolutely not. There's no point, if you've got a loading bay full of boxes or pallets, the last thing you want to do is to go and find the one that the device is telling you to do next. It just doesn't work that way. Okay, so I'm just going to fill in the quantity to handle of 2, because at this point you could break it up into smaller quantities if you wanted to.
So this is following our standard warehouse rules in terms of to use the bin locations, the bin rankings and bin priority.
And that's it, yeah. It's, you know, we are, in this version, we are as much as possible saying, you know, Dynamics NAV has a good warehouse offering, and this solution is about automating that, about, you know, streamlining the processes. We're not, you know, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're letting NAV drive as much of the process as possible. And I think that's best for everybody. You know, it's you end up with an overcomplicated product otherwise, I think. So, you know, and people can have their own bespoke, and none of it interferes with what's already there. Okay, so I then need to confirm the bin that I'm putting into. So I've trundled over with my front wheels over to W040011, and of course all of our bin locations are barcoded. That's perfectly normal. And I'm going to scan the barcode for that, which I happen to have here handily. Like so. Now that's confirming it. I mean, I could put it into a completely different bin location. You know, there are cases where in real life, you know, there might actually in real life be no space in that bin. There could be a mistake have been made. There could be various other problems. So you could put it in a different bin, but I'm just going to go with what it's suggesting. Click post, and then I'll just trundle off back to the receipting area and go and find the next thing that needs putting away.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's suggesting we can override, but it's there to guide the users of where the system is saying the item should be put.
That's it. And it's also no good insisting to the user that you must do this, that or the other, because if you start placing barriers in the way of the people in the warehouse, they just won't use it. if the software says to them it must go in W040011 and they say, but I can't, what are their options? Yeah, so they've got to be able to say, well, I couldn't put it in there, I'll put it in here. And it's similar with picking as well. You might set restrictions on what kind of lots you want them to pick, in that, you know, you want them to get rid of the stuff that's going to expire first, you know, or whatever. But, you know, in cases where there isn't any, you know, lot tracking or whatever, it might be more expedient for them, even though the system is suggesting they get it from such and such a bin and it's such and such lot number, it might be that that's right at the back of the racking and that actually they've got something identical they can take from the front, you know, which is more expedient. So you need to not get in their way. The minute you start throwing errors and barriers at them, then the less likely they are to use the software. You know, you've got to help them do their job and not get in their way.
And I see on the screen it's updated straight away, so I've got a live feed of what work items are remaining for me on putaways.
That's it. That updates once a minute. Okay. So I mean that is the basic fundamentals of how a transaction happens on the devices, and it really does just boil down to, I need these pieces of information in order to be able to do a pick or a put away or a receipt or whatever, and NAV controls what that is and the device is just displaying them. So it's very, very extendable. You know, it can be customized easily for a particular customer to suit the way they work, you know, with very little difficulty.
But that will be done in NAV, not the handheld device.
Exactly. The device software only changes if we decide that we're going to do something new and pretty with the user interface. Otherwise, it's all, you know, and that also helps give it a standard look and feel. There's a predictability over how it's going to function as well.
Well, yeah, the users are familiar with seeing a queue in NAV that gives them a directed figure like we have on screen there of we know how to interpret that and we know what the colour bands mean. So it's working with what we know already.
So just to finish off, we've been processing stuff on the device. This is all being fed through to a log, and I've got a sample in Power BI here which shows the activity that's been carried out. This is just an example. We have some very talented people who do that kind of thing, but I've just produced a simple Power BI that shows people's scan rates here at the bottom, so that's scans per minute. We've got a breakdown of user activity, so here you can see I did briefly log in as James earlier, just while I was checking everything was ready for the demo. The activities that have been carried out by type, so it's been mostly receipts with a few putaways, and also outstanding activity lines there. But you know, I find that the user activity there in the bottom right hand corner is something that a lot of customers are interested in, to see how, you know, what people's work rates are looking like, etc. And of course you can tie that into everything else that's being recorded in an NAV as well.
So we could have a dashboard published for the various managers in the warehouse who might want to have an overview of this data.
That's it, yeah. You know, and a lot of the other information there you can see to, you know, help you identify bottlenecks where problems are. You know, similar to the kind of thing that you have showing on the cue cards on the device menu. You can have all that information available in a role center in NAV or fed through to Power BI or, you know, whatever suits. But, you know, up to the minute information so you can see how well your day is going.
So do we have customers actively now using Power BI to look at their warehouse data?
Yes, we absolutely do. Yes, it's critical to a lot of operations. They want to get that stuff out the door quickly, to the point where, you know, they give bonuses depending on how fast people are working. So it's very important for them to be able to get that information